I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking through.
Hello, and welcome to another session of the Business Renovator. GIGO versus VIVO, or GIGO versus VIVO. That sounds like it could be a fight song or something. Anyway, we'll be back with Dave Watkins, my good friend, buddy, and business coach, in just a second. That's my shameless plug for being a focal point business coach. If you have a question for a coach, I'm one of them, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. My content information or access information is at the end of the show, but I can tell you, if you went to Phil at coachphil.ca and put in the subject that you would like to ask a question, we can have a look at it. If you have the question, put it in there. And if I'm the guy who could answer that question, I will set up a time for you. Otherwise, there's a couple of hundred other awesome, wonderful individuals around the globe, and I could invite them to step up and ask your question. So jump in. It's complimentary. Also, if you're watching this live, thank you for being here. And if you're watching this on the replay, just let us know where you're watching it from and put hashtag replay. And if you could go to our YouTube channel, I should put the link in so people can find it easier, and subscribe. That would be great, so that we can change the URL to a vanity URL. That would be greatly appreciated. Right now, I'm going to bring in my partner, my friend, and colleague, David Watkins.
Good morning, Phil.
Hello.
Good morning. Good morning, all you people out there.
So you're in Texas, right?
It's a beautiful day in the Woodlands, Texas.
And I'm in a little bit further away from you than just down the street. I'm in another country. I'm in the western part of Canada, not the whole thing, because it's a big country. I'm actually in Alberta.
Yes.
Anyway, you picked this crazy title, GIGO VIVO, or some people would say garbage in, garbage out, versus value in, value out. That's where we're going to start with this dialogue today. Why did you pick this, Dave?
I picked it because it's one that really means a lot to me. So I grew up in a family where the thinking was kind of negative. It was very negative, as a matter of fact. And I grew up with the habit of negative thinking and having negative thoughts come to mind, being hard on myself, saying things to myself I would never say to anyone else, like yelling idiot to myself. And through people I've met, I realized that instead of putting that garbage in my head and telling myself that garbage, I could do something different. I could focus on value, my thinking of value. My getting to the point where I was doing the GIGO became a habit, and habits can be changed. And so I tried developing the habit of value in, value out. And it's really changed my life.
Yeah, I'm going to add something to the GIGO.
Yes, please.
Because it could also, you said it can represent garbage in, garbage out. This actually comes from the technology world, I believe, in computers when they talk about that. So if you put garbage in, the computer will create and output an output of garbage out. So garbage out. However, because you just said it, you made a change, made a shift, and we're going to talk about, well, I'm going to ask you about that here in a second. So be ready for people want to know, how the hell did you do that? So that's the question I'm going to ask you in a second. But GIGO could also be good in, good out. So good input, good output. So you shifted from garbage in, garbage out to garbage, good in, good out. Here comes the question. Ready? How did
Okay.
you do that?
I have a great father-in-law who read Think and Go Rich, and he read Carnegie, and he read Zig Ziglar, and he was very proud to meet Zig Ziglar once. And he was in sales, but he also had some of the most successful insurance agencies for the Penn Mutual Company in California and in the country. And he owed it. He modeled that for me, which I thank him for often. And he did the same for one of my sons. He saw that my son was kind of like me and kind of like him, and he switched it from GIGO to VIVO. Another thing that happened that you are involved in, I don't know if you know it, but I think it really solidified in my mind when you challenged me to use words very precisely. So instead of saying, I need to go to the store, to make the conscious shift in my mind to, I want to go to the store, I choose to go to the store, instead of I need to. And being that precise in our internal thoughts really helped me to get over the last hump, I think, to get to where I am. So thank you for that, Phil.
You're welcome. I'd like to say I was the genius behind it all, but I'm not, because not unlike you, I too have had and challenged to stay on the upside or the positive side of language to myself. I grew up in a family of 4 siblings and 2 parents, and the 2 parents were doing the best job they could. And then for what they knew and what they learned, they worked hard, and they didn't have career tracks or gurus like Zig Ziglar to speak to them or mentor. They just did what they did, and their philosophy is, if you work hard, you can do better. And that is a strategy. However, it's not necessarily the best strategy, because trying harder isn't the answer to everything. Effort is absolutely taking action, but what if you could do something a little easier and quicker? And I think that's where the language shift helps that process to be possible, to make life changes a little easier. And the power between I have to and I get to, the difference is huge. And what was explained to me was around the idea of, if you tell somebody to do something, like if you have kids and they have chores to do, and you're going to ask them to take the garbage out, and they go, oh, no, I have to. But they're finding creative ways not to get it done, or they'll only do a half-arse job or half effort into it. And they're allowing their mind to talk them into how awful it is, how painful it is, all the reasons why not to go ahead. I still am challenged with that in certain areas of my own life. But if we change, as you say, change the languages to choose to, get to, those kind of things, then it's a lot easier to get it done. We find ways to do it. We're looking forward to it with optimism versus trepidation. And it really does make a difference, which I've got a graphic up here. See if I can make it fit in the screen here. And I'll share my screen. Yeah, there it is right there. I'm going to pop that in right now. And so what we're seeing here, I'm going to show you the negative one first. I clicked on the wrong spot. You got to click on the browser. There we go. So these are images where it's water with people around it giving off energy. This sounds kind of woo-woo, but there is actually a book. This one here, The Hidden Messages in Water. And this is a Japanese scientist who put this together and created this image that we're looking. No, not that one. this one right here, looking at here. And what we're seeing here is the negative energy that we give off is captured in this water that he has frozen. And you can see at the top here, you've got evil, you fool, you disgust me. Here's a thank you, love and gratitude, and harmony. Look at the difference in the way the flakes are set up, the molecules. Here's another one on the positive side. See, the structure and construct is much better than this one with these three up here. That's the power our thoughts and words have on us, according to this study. Now, I didn't do the study, obviously, but isn't that fascinating? I thought it was fascinating.
It is. It's interesting how the more positive instances are more beautiful.
Yeah, the structure is better. I mean, when you're happy, don't you feel better? Aren't you energized? Aren't people feeling better in your company?
Yeah. For me, being with people who make me laugh and who raise me up is so important.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just I enjoy it. It's a matter of adding something to my life. So I have some good friends that do that. You do that for me, Phil. And I have another friend that's just he's a geophysicist, really amazingly talented geophysicist, but he's got the craziest sense of humor you could imagine. And I love just hanging out, and we make each other laugh, and it adds to our lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I borrowed this. Well, I got inspired to create this here. Yes, you expect success, by a fellow who is a real creative genius. I was just listening to them this morning on a live stream with Jeffrey Gitomer and friends. And one of the friends is Pat Hazel. Pat Hazel's a creative genius. He's friends with Seinfeld, and he's a stand-up comic, a writer, producer, and all those wonderful things in the entertainment industry. And he actually wrote some of the stuff for the shows for Seinfeld. So he was on today, and the guy is just so quick-witted. It's just amazing. And he came up with this model, but a little bit different, because we were in a group of salespeople hanging out at the beginning of the pandemic a bunch of months ago and trying to maintain our sanity. Because if you're a performer, artist, actor, musician, when they shut it down, they had nowhere to go. Nobody could come hear them and listen.
Mhm.
They weren't allowed to. So he came online and he wrote a book. He found time to write the book that he's thinking about writing, but he was too busy to write it. So now it's written, and he's created a podcast in a traditional sense. It's a audio podcast. And sorry, Pat, I don't remember the name, so I'm not going to give it a plug. But it's about creativity, and some of the people he's had on there and some of the lessons have been brilliant. And if I knew I was going to talk about him this morning, I would have had his stuff here. But maybe before the end of the show, I'll find it or remember it and put it into the stream here. But long story to get to where I'm going. He put, you expect sales, which is brilliant. I wanted it to be more encompassing for the people that I work with. Yes, I do work with salespeople, and I love helping and training and coaching them in that space. However, I also love working with entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders to help them in their challenges on a daily basis. So it's not all about selling, but selling is everywhere. So it truly is really all about selling. But I want to do something a little bit different for those people that don't think selling is a good thing to do, or sales. They don't like sales. They hate sales. Well, you expect success. So if we expect something versus expecting the opposite, which is what we're talking about today, garbage in, garbage out, value in, value out, vision in, vision out. I liked all of those. That's why I thought when you came up with a genius title, simple in its essence, I suppose, but powerful in its message. So this comes from Pat Hazel. He's a wonderful guy too.
One thing I read just recently is about the impacts of negative thinking on our actual performance, our health, and really our whole lives. And studies have shown that negative thinking can actually shorten our lifespans.
Yeah.
It leads to apathy and anxiety, which of course restrict our performance and success. It steals our joy. Think about that. What is better in life than being joyful? And something we're doing to ourselves is stealing that opportunity to be joyful. And the positive aspect are uh, surprises in performance, happiness, joy, health. And so as I read through this, I'm thinking, okay, this is almost like a diet, that we're disciplined when we eat to try to eat healthy foods for the most part. But when we think, oftentimes we don't apply that same discipline to our mental process. So when we have bad thoughts going in and negative thoughts going in, that's like eating a day's worth of butter. It's like having a diet that's all butter because it makes you feel bad. And I've never done that, but I can imagine it would make me feel bad. It would be really bad for my body. And thinking about positive things and being grateful and thankful for things in our lives and recognizing joy is like eating a very healthy diet that helps us function as at our best, I think.
So this show is all about being authentic, and I think the next time you bring up a recommendation of eating or comparing it to butter, I think in order to be able to bring that to the show next time, you have actually had to eat the butter and tell us what it really felt like.
Yeah, how did it go?
Just kidding. Of course, just kidding. I agree with what you're talking about. If you go back to all of the content that's out there around health and mental and physical and others, worry and fear. Worry is the disease mechanism, and 80% and 90% of what we worry about never comes to fruition, which is a good thing. But it stops us from doing the other things that we would prefer to do or like to do or want to do. Fear is fantasized experience appearing real. And so what we do is create this little movie in our mind movie, and we focus on that. And it doesn't allow us to move forward to, what if it was the flip side of that, a 180 of what we're worried about or fearful of? What would that look like? What would it feel like? And that makes a huge difference. I just spent, I guess is not necessarily a good word, but I invested time, money, and energy this past weekend to hang out with about 700 people from around the world, different time zones and different countries and different hemispheres and half-spheres and quarter-spheres. I just made all that up, by the way. My name's not Pat Hazel, so it didn't quite get the buzz that he would have got. Anyway, what I learned is that if you hang around with people of like-mindedness, it's amazing what you can make have happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I was reminded about something when I first got into this, studying how to live a little slightly better life, or quite a bit better life. And it was said, like, chickens don't fly with eagles, and eagles don't peck with chickens, right? So birds of a feather flock together. And you and I are both familiar with the Oz principles, where they talk about accountability. And one way we're able to simply teach that to people and share that wisdom is by creating the victor-victim. Whereas above the line and below the line, above the line is a victor. They're proactive. They're take responsibility. Even if they didn't cause it, they'll make it better than what it was. They'll own it. They have they're option thinkers, opportunity seekers. They'll have a vision, which is kind of what we're talking about today. VIVO, vision in, vision out, value out. And they also strive for excellence. And they give you energy, and the kind of the people you want to hang out with, right? Yeah. Whereas the other people that you were talking about, below the line, the victims, they blame everybody. They've got an excuse for everything. They deny everything, and they live in this place called scarcity. So they're not seeing the opportunity of possibilities in a positive way. They're looking at the opportunity of possibilities in a negative way. It's possible for everything crappy in their life to show up. So they don't look for ways to go beyond that. Now, that's not the only thing to do, but it's a really good foundational piece. If you change as Zig Ziglar would say, something about you got to stop your stinking thinking. So if you're below the line, you're stinking thinking, and if you're above the line, you're not.
Yeah. My poor mom, who to her dying day was extremely negative and worried about everything. She was very fearful.
Mm,
So one way you'd ask, how do you get out of the trap and the habit of negative thinking? One way is to address your fears and think about it. Like, are your fears fears that are rational are really important and keep us alive? But
right. I'm being
I think
fearful of standing on a 30-story balcony without any railing around it. If you're not fearful of that and don't have a parachute on, then
yeah, you have a problem.
yeah, that's not
Yeah.
rational.
But anyway, her whole family was like that. It's not
Mm,
her fault she turned out the way she did. If she were to do nothing and to change it, her momentum just took her to that place,
right.
as it took everyone else in her family. And so I was just lucky also to find my dad's family was not like that, and then my father-in-law, as I mentioned, really modeled a new way of thinking for me.
And you just gave us a real live example close to your heart about where birds of a feather flock together. So their family were fearful birds,
Mm-hmm.
and they flocked around and continued to have the same dialogue and couldn't see beyond the limitations that they had self-imposed.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it's very sad to think about that.
I got a streaming thing here. It says successful people are simply those with successful habits. That's from Brian Tracy.
Mm-hmm.
Here's another one. Think like a winner, expect to win. That's kind of what we're promoting today. That's our sponsor, just like Sesame Street. Our sponsor today is think, and expect success. Think like a winner. Here's another one I quite like too. Is Orison Swett Martin came up with this. It's our get-to-itiveness and our stick-to-itiveness. That we can get to it and stick to it in a positive way or a negative way. So I'm going to give everybody a gift here today. Would that be okay with you?
Sure.
Here's what you're going to do. You're going to think about a race that you've won. And I want you to think about it in as much clarity as you possibly can and relive it and think of all the feelings. And I'm not going to tell you what the race is, but I want you to think about it. And I know I'm going to be like the game show host. Now that you've had a chance to think about it, here comes the game show host buzzer. Whatever you thought of wasn't the right answer. How do I know? I've delivered this exercise multiple times, close to thousands of times, and there's not anybody that gets the right answer. The very first race we've all won is being born, the sperm race. That's the very first one. And then from there, what did you learn? What did you do? What did you become? So if you're little and you don't remember, or when you were little, you probably don't remember you learned to crawl, learn to stand up. But if you've got infants in your life, or you've raised children, borrow from those experiences, add them to your list. So what you're going to do is you're going to build your 100 success list. And ideally, you want to sit down in one sitting, don't get up, no distractions, and just put them down, all of them, big or small, recall them all. And don't judge them, just write them down. Just write them down. Everything counts. Like what did you learn at kindergarten? What did you learn pre-kindergarten? What did you learn in grade 1? You learn to print, you learn to read, you learn to just list them all. Oh, and then you pass grade 1, pass grade 2. What you learn in grade 2. I want you to build a minimum of 100 successes and wins that you've had over your life. So if you're 60 some odd years, you survived. There's 60 right there. You've survived 60 years. Now, what else did you do? What did you learn? Who did you help? What did you overcome? What did you survive? And capture them all. Dr. Bandura says we go through our successes way too lightly and way too quickly. So stop it. Slow down and wallow in your successes. And in case you never catch another episode of the Business Renovator, I'm going to give you part 2 of it. Once you've done all of that and got your at least 100 successes, scrape off your top 10 and put them somewhere close to you that you can use and reflect and borrow. So you can use this methodology to turn your seemingly extraordinary into your ordinary second nature, just like you. that's our nugget for you hanging out, listening to us. We're not quite done yet, but that's what I'm talking about now. For you, it's your gift. It's 100 success list. You can choose to do it, or choose not to do it. Again, going back, I think it was it Jim? Oh, it was Jim Rohn this time. He said, when we decide to do something, if we really want to do it, we'll find a way. If we don't, we'll find an excuse. So it's totally up to you whether you find a way to make this happen or find a reason for not doing it. So that's my gift for you today, listening to this now or in a replay. I'll ask you, if you do watch this in replay, go hashtag replay. Let us know where you're watching us from.
Hey, thank you, Phil. I was expecting a car, but
well, put it on your list.
This would, I think this gift may be better.
Okay. I thought I had one more. No, this is just that book. But the things we say to ourselves make a difference as to our future. So if you're not, one of the formulas I was reminded about on the weekend was E as in echo plus R as in rabbit equals O as in outcome. So E plus R equals O. If you look at your outcome and you're not happy with it, change the E, the event, or R, your response to what's going on, and changing one or two of those will absolutely change your outcome. So if you're thinking negative thoughts, stop it. Start thinking positive thoughts, possibility thoughts, and see what happens. And don't expect that to happen overnight, although sometimes it can be that fast. And don't be too hard on yourself. Look forward with optimism, not with trepidation.
That's really that's really great advice, and I think that aspects of things we can do to help us get there is to be aware of what we're thinking. Often we're not aware of our thoughts. We just or what we're telling to ourselves. We just move right beyond that. But if it's important in my journey, it's been very important for me to actually recognize what I'm thinking, because so much of it was negative for me. And then and we'll find that as we shift, our emotional resilience is better. We'll find we are grateful for more things. And to be grateful is as Brene Brown says, a great joy in our lives.
So I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Yeah.
Might not be that tough. What do you do to pay attention or be aware of the thoughts you're having?
It's a matter of mindset for me, and it's being giving myself the time and effort and to be aware. So it's a little bit like stepping outside the internal part of my mind and saying, okay, you're someone if I were looking at you, if I were having lunch with you, me, what kinds of things would I notice? Would I notice that I'm negative a lot? Do I worry? Would I notice I'm worrying? Would I notice I'm too hard on myself? What would I notice? And that helps me a lot.
Now, do you just think that out loud or in your head to yourself?
I think it in my head. I don't. I don't change seats and do all of that. Change places and all.
And how do you observe or know the trends of your self-talk?
Well, like last night, my wife and I were having dinner with a friend, and my goal in meeting with friends is to find energy, to give thanks, and to love my friends. And so I can look back and say, did I do that? Was it a positive discussion? Were we authentic with each other? And last night it was a fantastic evening. very positive, came away energized from that dinner.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
It's 173 days from that event,
Which event is that?
the one you just talked about.
Mm-hmm. And
What's happened between that event and the 173 days in terms of the trends of your self-talk? What have you noticed?
I've probably noticed that I blew it a few times.
I'm going somewhere with my crazy questions.
And I probably noticed that I've learned new ways to be more positive and constructive.
You haven't said the word I was hoping for, so I'm looking at the clock here, so I'm going to wrap it up with where I was going. What I would encourage you to do, if you're not doing it, Dave, is to have a reflective thinking journal, so that when it's 173 days from this event, you can go back and look, I'm past that. I'm better than that. Or yeah, I'm still tracking that same trend. So you can see what's happening in your self-talk, good, bad, and the ugly, track it all. Write down your wins, write down your goals, your aspirations, write down your fears and things that are causing you, and decide whether those are things you want to change. And then the trends will tell you what's important. And then at that point, you can make a decision to let it go, because what we hang on to can drain our energies. I was reminded about that on the weekend. Messes and things like that we have to clear up, clean up, get rid of. Could be relationships, could be cleaning out a garage, could be getting your finances in order, whatever it might be. Messes and distractions, right? Having a journal, you can celebrate when you track, I had these messes and I've cleaned them up. So for me on the weekend, I had some messes that were hanging over me and I cleaned them up in the financial arena, and I feel so much lighter in that area. I have other messes as I look at my library that need attending to. So once I get it, they're a distraction, and we're carrying all of those messes around. And if you were to come up with a reflective thinking journal, once I've completed my organizing of my library, I can put that in there as a win, as a success.
Yeah.
And build on that to increase our efficacy, which really is our ability to get stuff done, take on things that are, at this point in time in life, extraordinary and scary, and turn them into ordinary, just like us, in second nature, and do it with less stress as you move into the new experience on the physical plane. We can rehearse it in the mental stage before we put it out there. And there's a lot of great content on that talks about that in more depth than we can do in a 30-minute show.
Well, I just want to second that, in that I do have a journal like that. I don't know why I didn't bring it up.
I don't know either, but
because I was thinking about other stuff maybe, but anyway, yes. And I appreciate your encouraging me to do that long ago. But it is really, it's very powerful. Yeah.
And the hardest work out there is, do you know the answer?
No.
Thinking.
Thinking is hard.
Yeah, it is. And it takes commitment. And because it's hard, we creatively avoid it. So as long as we keep saying thinking is hard, guess what? It's going to be hard. So if we were wanting to think on paper and write things down, we could change our self-talk to, I enjoy thinking, because the things I uncover and the trends I notice about myself, it's amazing. It's getting easier and easier every day. So we re-imprinted that. Do you have a last word for our viewers today, or the replay viewers?
No, I don't. Just that I would encourage them all to think about what they think about.
Think about what they think about. If you want to find out more about this young fellow and my show, this is his website. FocusedGrowthPerformance.com.
Thank you.
And here's that formula I was talking about. E plus R equals O. And I don't want to show that one because everybody would be a guest, and that show's over. So that wouldn't. And I wanted to let everybody know, here's a commercial. I'm in the BS business. Belief to see it. Believe it to see it. So on that note, I'm going to say that's a wrap for this edition of the Business Renovator. A couple of things I want to do before we shut it down is get over to here and remind you guys that the You and This Wonderful is the way it is on purpose, because each and every one of us is wonderful and unique in the same breath. So go out there and live that way and be wonderful like you are.
I get shit done, I have fun. It's my time and I'm the one. I'm breaking